is the year of the Jets. Fuck the Patriots.
Imagine being a Danganronpa fan. I could never, and I'm never going to. Because I hate those styles. It's just a copy version of anime. It's pointless.
Danganronpa is such a goofy little thing, and I feel like I just had to make a video on it for a multitude of reasons, including the fact that it's kind of why I've been absent for over 4 months, because I just made one random GameStop purchase back in like February.
I was the caller about returning my Big Chungus game.
And from that point forward, it led to a kind of an obsession with this franchise, to the point where, you know, one single purchase at GameStop led to the purchase of all these things too. With that in mind, I didn't really have a structure for this video. I kind of wanted to go into segments, but then I realized I didn't really have an idea of how I wanted to split these up. So I'm just gonna talk about the game in general, you know, go over the trials and the characters and the many problems that plague this series, because psych, this shit's a banger. Roll the video.
No matter what into edition, I'll hit it. Don't need to cash all my chips in. Got them stacking in riches. And my truth bullets that will pierce with precision. You hit as well as one of Yasuhiro's predictions.
I can't remember exactly where this was said, but somewhere I had seen a really good statement on the entire opening for Danganronpa, and that pretty much was just Danganronpa's first chapter is a perfect introduction for a new player. Not to say that it's perfect or anything, because it surely isn't, but it's a really good starting point for anyone who has no idea what they're jumping into. And the way that the first chapter of this game is laid out and all the advantages that are given to you throughout the first chapter really do a great job at sucking the player into this story, because of how, I guess, cozy it makes you at the start. Coming off the back of the start of this game, where you are just introduced to a cavalcade of brand new characters that you have no correlation with at all, and then eventually going on to have Sayaka's presence basically kind of forced onto you, might be kind of weird at first, but having someone like this at the very start of your game, relaxed and comfortable, even though you don't know who Sayaka is, the fact that Makoto does, and he finds solace in her presence being there close to him, it kind of transfers that directly to the player, and it kind of uplifts this level of unease that you originally had. It's still there because of the situation you find yourself in, but there's not as much of it because you have someone who's there to share it with you. And I think that's very important when looking at Sayaka's chapter as a whole. Her initiating her presence as, you know, your assistant really does impact a lot of your early decisions, because I can say for sure that because of this closer relationship that you have early on, most of my free times in this first chapter were spent with Sayaka. Even after I had already obtained her skill, it didn't really matter, because I felt like she was the one I was the closest to and that I could, I guess, have an easier time interacting with. On top of that, this level of comfort that is offered to you kind of causes you to overlook a lot of her weird mannerisms. You know, in the moment you'll think it's kind of odd, but eventually you'll just kind of just let it slide by.
Like I said, I'm psychic.
What a sick joke!
Things really ramp up once Monokuma shows up to initiate the first motive, which is a videotape that's unique to every student here, pretty much just giving you an idea of what's happening in your life in the outside world. And based off what we see when we watch Makoto's tape, it kind of gives you an idea of what each person's tape does entail, because, I mean, Makoto's tape is genuinely, like, terrifying.
You getting picked to attend Hope's Peak Academy is like a dream come true. Make sure you do your best.
I'm so proud of you, son. But remember, don't push yourself too hard.
Are you really watching this, Makoto? Good luck, okay?
Oh, what's wrong, Makoto? Is your family dead? Oh, boo-hoo-hoo.
With this, the only other tape you get a glimpse at is Sayaka's, which causes her to just have a complete mental breakdown. And I think this is a very important piece as to why you get so invested starting in with this game, because now that single piece of solace that you once had is completely taken away, because Sayaka's state leaves you anxious. This eventually leads to all the other events that topple on top of this. You caring for Sayaka, recommend that she keeps protection for herself in her room with the golden katana near the gym. and then the eventual idea where she knocks at your door for the room switch. And again, this is a lot of stuff that piles up, but you don't really question any of it in terms of like ill will because of how comfortable this character has made you up to this point. It leaves you that much more shocked once she's killed, but it drives you that much harder to find out who the fuck did it! Going into this trial, you spend a lot of time simply just trying to clear your name for the simple fact that Sayaka's death occurred in your room. That's the entire basis of how this whole thing starts off, is that it's your fault because it was in your room, only you have the key to your room, blah blah blah. But with your little detective work that you conducted, you can pretty much prove this without a shadow of a doubt, and from that point on, it's simply just pinpointing who you really think was the person behind this. As stated earlier, this is a perfect introduction for a brand new player because you do a lot of detective work, but the detective work doesn't always just give you the answer. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite. A lot of what is built up through your investigation and the evidence that you present in these trials, you really don't know who the culprit is until like I'd say like 3/4 in or so. Now that's not always the case, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But overall, this is a genuinely solid trial that gives you a complete idea of what clues you're going to be looking for in the future, as well as how these things are going to be laid out and done overall. And again, this trial isn't perfect. In fact, none of them are. While I would like to talk about the issues that I have with the trial at hand, I think it's best to save those issues for the end to talk about, because the issues that I have with this trial kind of ring true for every trial in this game. So I think it's best just to save those for the end. But right now, I want to talk about you. I've come to find that one of the loudest sentiments that has rung across the Danganronpa community online is how much people just absolutely despise Sayaka's existence as a whole. For all the people that have played this game and have truly paid attention and indulged in its content, story, characters, writing, everything, I don't understand how you can hate this character. Throughout my time in the Danganronpa community, on the internet, it seems like the strongest opinions that people have on these characters seem to be targeted towards the females over anything, and the only time that really isn't applied is when it's the protagonists. But regardless, anyone who sees Sayaka's character in an overall negative light doesn't really have any good defense for this opinion outside of the fact that, oh, she betrayed Makoto, which I'll talk about it in a bit, but that's clearly not the case here. But also, I feel like Sayaka's character is something that I think this franchise kind of struggles with, and that's Chapter 1 characters. And what I mean by that are characters that just last for the first chapter and are killed off. First chapter characters don't tend to get a lot of development, it seems. Or at least for some reason, the ones that don't get much development aren't talked about too much. But I'm not saying that Sayaka's the only good first chapter character here, because Rantaro and Kaede from V3 are fantastic, and while Ultimate Imposter from Dangan 2 doesn't get a lot of his development in the actual game, the development you see that character take in Danganronpa 3, I think, does more than enough to make up for the shortcomings there. The only other first chapter character I see people genuinely point out the fact that they hate them so much is Teru, which that's fully deserved. Teru fucking sucks.
Leave the kitchen over waste you too. The only thing you ever killed at all is GameCube dude.
Meat, you say? Do you prefer it tender or would you like it hard?
Go fuck yourself and then go die.
But when it comes to Dangan 1, no one at all, or at least that I've seen, talks about how terrible of a character Leon is. Leon gets barely any dialogue. The murder that he commits really didn't have to happen, which is another thing that we see in another game in this franchise, which... But overall, Leon is a terrible character, and I see no one point this out, and it is definitely overshadowed by how much hate Sayaka gets. I will never understand it, and that's why I pointed out earlier that I think a lot of the stronger opinions are focused towards the female characters, and I think a lot of the side male characters are just kind of ignored, because if they weren't, Leon would 100% be getting more hate. Leon is awful, dude.
Stupid! Well, you're crying like a little bitch.
The last thing I want to talk about in this section is the defense for Sayaka when it comes to betraying Makoto. After the trial's over, Kyoko talks to you about how when you analyze everything put in front of you, Sayaka really didn't betray Makoto, or so much that because she couldn't fully betray him, that's why her plan failed. To say that Sayaka did not have Makoto's well-being in mind at any point and was simply there just to manipulate him is flat out wrong, dude. And I think one of my favorite little details that proves this is the sword. You take Sayaka to the gym to get this sword so that she can keep it as a form of protection, and instead she recommends that you keep it. And because that sword was in your room when she executed this plan, Leon was able to use it as a form of defense and then retaliation against her. If it wasn't for her having your own well-being in mind first and foremost, she likely could have gotten away with this murder, but because what you would consider a mistake, she wasn't able to complete her plan. Little things like this are just why I genuinely really like Sayaka as a character, and I think that her development here is pretty well done, and this chapter as a whole is just a fantastic introduction to this game. Anyway, it's butter time.
I want to change. It's time for me to become a man.
Piece of shit!
We're starting up chapter 2, baby. That means we're talking about one of the all-time GOATs. That's right, I'm talking about Chihiro. I'm not one to brag, but I'm a pretty big fan of Chihiro. I'm not gonna lie, and I can prove it too. This is my baby son, and I love him very much. But before that, we gotta talk about the lame stuff. Following the events of our last trial, we're granted access to the second floor, and none of these rooms really matter that much outside of the library. Once we get to the library, we find a note that gives us a little bit more clarification on our situation, but not really. This will all come into effect a little bit later, and then we'll talk about it then, because it doesn't really matter right now, because piecing these... The only event that happens between this and our next motive meeting is the fact that this kind of kicks off the whole Toko fiending for Byakuya thing. And I'm not gonna lie here, I actually really like this stuff. Even by the end of all of Danganronpa, this is never resolved. Up until like the very end, Byakuya constantly just reminds Toko that she smells, and for some reason that just gives her a boner.
You ugly ass motherfucking gorilla looking smelly bitch. Motherfucker, you got me fucked.
The same day that Toko convinces you to help her spy on Byakuya so she could smell his musk, we're given our next big motive, which is a single dark secret that each person has. If no one is killed within 24 hours, then Monokuma will share all of these secrets across the world. Which, I mean, However, Makoto doesn't see it as much of a big deal, considering our secret right now is the fact that we wet the bed, because as a character, we're still about as bland as a Ritz cracker. But soon we will come to find there are some scary things in the closet.
Can I show you a scary video?
You are obsessed with me!
Hey, you're the one showing me all the...
Yeah, sadly some bastard slaughtered our boy and crucified him like the Christ figure he is. Don't worry, the true goats appear in more than one game in this franchise. The investigation process for Trial 2 is pretty similar to the first one, all things considered, except for one major thing, and that is pretty much from the very start of this investigation, Byakuya is leading you everywhere, as if he has every single clue as to what happened here. That really got me on my first playthrough here, because up to this point I figured Byakuya was just a straight asshole, so I was like, oh yeah, this guy definitely did it. And there's so much information that is stacked onto you through this method that like you go into this trial 100% just like, yeah, he did it. Like, this is so easy. I don't know why they even did it this way. You know, there's no mystery here. Byakuya is the one that leads you into the correct gym room, takes you to the library, and leads you to the archives that detail Genocide Jack's murders and how they're done. Archives that he explicitly states high-ranking individuals in governments and like overall society know about. So yeah, this guy's just kind of outing himself, really.
It's you! It's you! How could you, man?
That is 100% the idea that you're going to go into the trial with, is just trying to prove that he did it, which I think is a pretty cool take. Going into Trial 2, this thing can be split up in 3 separate sections. The first being, of course, you know, pinning a lot of it on Byakuya just for him to be a dick the entire time. Like, are you sure it was me? Are you sure? Like, yeah, dude, you're right here in front of me. Only to find out that he instead was the one who stumbled on Chihiro's body, and, you know, rather than report it or anything, he figured, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna hog-tie this guy because funny. Like, going on to see who Byakuya is by the end of this game and throughout the rest of this series, he definitely is not the same person who went in here and crucified Chihiro, because, again, why'd you do that? Like, really? To what? To make it interesting? You defiled a corpse.
Fuck you.
The second part this trial can be split into is identifying exactly who Genocide Jack is. This is a character that's been talked about a little bit beforehand, and I didn't really mention it because I wanted to save it for here, as well as the fact that once we found Chihiro's body, Toko fainted and then locked herself in her room, which we then talked to her later and had a very suspicious conversation. And on top of Byakuya going into here, those two are number one suspect. There's no one else that's really like on the chopping block in terms of just base evidence when it comes to going into this trial. A lot of that is pieced together as you go along. And of course, the third part is pinning it on Mondo, which another thing I purposefully neglected to mention earlier is the whole bonding thing with Mondo and Ishimaru in the spa. Because again, it's seen as more of a trivial matter when it comes up, outside of the fact that it makes them really buddy-buddy and whatnot. That doesn't really have any reflection on this trial, at least on your base evidence going into it, outside of the handbook being missing. But you don't really question that until way later and once you get near that conclusion. I think I've talked enough about Byakuya's antics.
Go fuck yourself.
But the reveal for Genocide Jack is actually pretty interesting, all things considered. We know by this point Byakuya knows who Genocide Jack is, and that is purposefully why he strung up Chihiro like he did. It was all to pin it on Toko and bring Genocide Jack out. It's pretty interesting, and I really like the take that they make with this character, especially because we're talking a serial killer who in this world has killed hundreds of people, yet in this game, I'm sure because of circumstances, they don't commit any of the murders, and I genuinely think that's a pretty unique take. And lastly, we tie everything back to Mondo, which actually does involve the whole sauna kerfuffle that he and Ishimaru went through. The fact that he learned that he could fry his own handbook in the sauna, and so he did the same thing with Chihiro's. That is pretty much what ties it to him, is simply asking him to show his handbook because of the one that's missing. But what I always find really interesting about this trial is why Chihiro was killed. You can boil this down to the basics and simply have it be that Mondo wanted to keep his secret, but well, that's some of the case. It really isn't the whole story, of course. Chihiro was also someone who was really scared to have their secret revealed, but instead of trying to commit some kind of heinous act in order to keep it a secret, they instead were determined to better themselves so that when the time came to reveal it, they were prepared. And it's such an admirable move. I love Chihiro's growth for that. And out of everybody, they sought out Mondo to help them with this because they trusted them the most. To see what it leads to, simply out of his anger that Chihiro can move past their secrets while he couldn't. Dude, it's actually so sad, man. He looked to Iwata as a source of strength, when in reality, he proved to be the stronger man. But even then, I genuinely feel like this is more of a burst of rage, accidental kind of murder here. And I think what genuinely supports that is the cover-up Mondo goes through, swapping the entire rooms just to cover up not only the fact that he was the one who did it, but also to help cover up Chihiro's secret because he never got the chance to reveal it himself. But then, of course, Byakuya had to come in and ruin it.
You fuck young boys.
But to see how much care Mondo put into covering up for Chihiro, even though, yeah, you killed him, it's kind of sweet, man. And it makes Chihiro's death that much more sad. And it also makes it that much more meaningless when Monokuma just comes out right and just exposes Mondo's secret after he's found to be the guilty one here.
Butter dog. The dog with the butter dog.
$10 million.
Shit to Chad Wooden. Chad Wooden wipes his ass with
$10 million.
They were fake?
Of course they were fake. Give me that. What? I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's chapter 3. And you know what they always say, legends live on. This time around, our bribe is a juicy stack of 10 million clams. But no one really seems that interested. In fact, Byakuya even stands up and tells Monokuma,
"You should just admit that you're broke, okay? You're all broke."
Anyway, now we got access to the 3rd floor, but in addition, Asahina informs us that the night prior, she claims to have seen Chihiro's ghost. So we go to investigate. Turns out in the background, Chihiro had been making an AI on a laptop that was found in the library, which we figured to be broken, which goes by the name Alter Ego and presents itself as Chihiro's face. Up to this point, Kiyotaka has been pretty out of it ever since the end of the last trial because of Mondo's death and, the betrayal, because, I understand it, man. If you have a makeout session with the boys in a sauna and then one of them dies not long after, it's gonna leave you scarred, dude. Using the gathered information from Chihiro's logs, Alter Ego takes the form of Mondo to cheer up Kiyotaka, and in the process, this spawns kind of a feud between not only Ishimaru, but also our loving dumpling out here. From this point on, both of them are in a constant battle for Alter Ego's attention, so much to the point that Kyoko implements a rule basically banning them from the changing rooms. On top of this, we learn from Alter Ego about a secret weapon that not even Monokuma has any idea about, and from there on, we do our best to assist Alter Ego in accessing this so-called weapon. But ain't that too bad, because someone up and steals our shit. After recurring events of finding Hifumi humping the computer, Alter Ego has gone missing. And when a search party is set to break, nighttime rolls around. Everyone collectively decides that the search will resume tomorrow morning. So the morning comes, and people are missing. Once again, the search for Alter Ego is quickly disbanded as we hear Celeste from the 3rd floor. Reaching the rec room, we find a bruised Celeste as well as a hammer marked with the number 1 on it on the floor. Talking to Celeste, she claims that she was attacked by someone in a Robo-Justice suit. And what do you know, she just happens to have photo evidence of this incident. How convenient! After seeing this picture, we begin a search for the person in the robot costume and stumble upon an injured Hifumi in the library right next to a hammer with number 2 on it. Hifumi relays a similar story to Celeste, where he was attacked by Megazord before he ran off. As a result, Hifumi is taken to the infirmary, and as we're caring for him, Celeste quickly runs down and informs us that she had seen a shadow moving from atop the stairs. Celeste continues to lead a group around looking for Optimus Prime, and then we eventually return to the infirmary where we find that Hifumi was left unattended and is now dead, with the 3rd hammer laying next to his corpse. Eventually, everyone notices that throughout this entire event, Ishimaru has been missing. Throughout another search, Ishimaru's corpse is then found in the science lab, marked with the 4th hammer. And then Hifumi's just gone. Directly afterwards, we lead a group to Ishimaru's corpse, only to find that he too is missing. Throughout all this, we have yet to figure out who is dressed up as the oversized Bakugan, but eventually we stumble across the art room supply closet, which appears to be locked. Though returning later, we find it unlocked with both Hifumi and Ishimaru's corpse inside. Surprisingly though, Hifumi isn't completely dead, and with his dying breath, he tells us that Yasuhiro is responsible for his murder. Eventually, during our rigorous investigation, we do find Yasuhiro crammed inside a locker, still dressed up like a Decepticon. And while it can appear to be an open and shut case, the real problem is that the robot suit cannot be taken off by simply one person. And this alone completely removes Yasuhiro of suspicion, even after finding all the supplies and blueprints for this robot suit in his room. Not just because he's unable to take it off himself, but also because this is Yasuhiro we're talking about, okay? This is Mr. Crystal Ball. You think he would plan out something this elaborate? Not to mention carrying Hifumi's fat ass up 2 flights of stairs. But who am I kidding? We already know who it is. Going into Trial 3, if you've been paying attention to any of this, you know 100% that Yasuhiro is not responsible for these deaths. And because you know that he's not the one at fault, you already know who did it. For someone who's known as a professional gambler, Celeste really fucking sucks at it.
Let it ride. Let it ride. That's right, 16 black.
No, 16 red, you lose.
Wait, he said red. Oh, fuck.
She spends so much time in this trial constantly trying to pin every piece of evidence on Yasuhiro. It's genuinely laughable. This plan was never going to work in a million years because you decided to pin it on the klutz. Why? Out of all the survivors of Dangan 1, I genuinely think that Yasuhiro is like the most puzzling one, because after this, he gets no presence. He gets like a couple like seconds of screen time in Dangan 3 as like comic relief. He isn't even involved in that last killing game. Hell, his mom gets more development than he does in Ultra Despair Girls, which is a great game, by the way. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Anyway, back to the clown. But before I talk about anything else in this trial, I want to bring up a concept, and that is what I'd like to call the kicker when it comes to pinning evidence here. If you paid attention, I made sure to neglect the fact of both Sayaka's message as well as Mondo's slip-up in their trials. And here, it's no different. The issue is, when it comes to these pieces of evidence in Trial 1 and 2, they aren't really called into question or brought up until near the end of their respective trials, so there's a lot of time spent piecing things together, because nothing these suspects said prior really brought any attention towards them before the trial began. But with Celeste, her slip-up occurs way before you even begin to investigate any of these attacks. In Mondo's case, it's a genuine slip-up that leads to his demise here, and with Sayaka's message, when I first saw that string of numbers, I genuinely spent like a couple minutes just looking at it, trying to understand what it meant, and all I got out of it was
C764.
But in this trial, it's so unbelievably obvious. Celeste spends the entire game building up this character trait of adaptability and learning to survive. But the first time you encounter her after her supposed incident with being struck with the hammer, she acts terrified, which is completely out of character regardless of if you're being attacked or not. Not to mention, you're the only person with picture evidence and the only person who's supposedly seen this fucking robot. The entire time you were looking for this thing, it's just her telling you where she apparently saw it go, and then you go in that direction. Never do you see this thing with your own eyes until you find Yasuhiro crammed in the locker. I know it may sound like I'm going a little too overboard here, but this game is the first one that sprung out the whole third chapter curse thing because of how bad most chapter 3s are. And yeah, I totally get it. Every time that this franchise has tried to do a double murder, in some way or another, it usually flops. And that's not to say that this game's chapter 3 is the worst one, because it definitely isn't.
I fucking hate you. Fucking die.
But out of every trial in this game, it's definitely the most disappointing because it's the first double murder. And throughout the trial, it's made incredibly apparent that Celeste wasn't doing this alone. She used Alter Ego as an incentive for Hifumi to help her out, which also comes out to make a lot of sense once you go over your evidence, because there's no way she's carrying his fat ass up 2 flights of stairs. But it is interesting that she dropped her facade for this, yet during her execution, she still tries to wear a poker face.
You heard me. Lazy.
Right.
Double glazed.
Number 4. Bullets in hot dog.
Once Celeste's trial wraps up, we go with Kyoko to check on Alter Ego in the bathhouse, and she informs us about a secret room that she had found in the back of the men's bathroom. So we go to investigate it. We find a room littered with documents of Hope's Peak's history, but we don't get much time to look around before a masked figure comes up and knocks us out, and hits us with a lick faster than Pokemon resellers at Costco. Having woken up at some unknown hour in the night, we stumble across the gym where we peek in to see Sakura fighting Monokuma, and we find out that Sakura was a mole among the group this entire time. But later on, as we're with Kirigiri exploring the next floor, she gets a suspicion that we're hiding something, and not wanting suspicion to fall on Sakura or cause a ruckus, we choose not to tell her, which makes her a little angry.
Bitch.
Sadly though, choosing to keep this secret turns out to do Jack diddly dick, because Monokuma comes out and proudly proclaims to everyone that Sakura is indeed the mole. He uses this as the next big motive to cause a dispute between the group. Asahina is quick to defend her as she believes that she was simply manipulated by Monokuma, while as Byakuya takes this time to confirm his suspicions that there's been a mole this entire time, as well as choosing to designate her as an outcast. The opinions between these two are where the primary dispute lies for this chapter. Sakura claims that in an attempt to make up for this, she's going to challenge the mastermind head on in an attempt to defeat them once and for all, but few are still skeptical. Once the meeting concludes, we're in the dining hall, where Byakuya and Asahina continue to bicker about their sides of the argument until Byakuya goes full-on dick mode and says that Sakura would be better off dead.
Go fuck yourself and then go die.
Hina understandably punches him right in the face, but Toko, however, ain't liking this because now Hina assaulted her man. And so the following day, we find the two back in the dining hall where Genocide Jack has just attacked Hina. And as we take Hina to the infirmary, Sakura learns of this and bursts out of the room in a fit of rage. But all's good because Kyoko apologizes to us for being a big ol' meanie head earlier. She also tells us that Alter Ego wants to speak with us, and so we head to the bathhouse. Turns out Alter Ego wants us to hook him up to Hope's Peak's network in an attempt to uncover any hidden information about not only what's going on, but also where the headmaster is. So we take the laptop to the hidden room we had previously found and hook him up, and then head back to our rooms. Though our rest does not last long, Kirigiri comes into our room to inform us of the situation on the 3rd floor in the rec room. Once we get up there, we see a panicked Asahina, and when we look inside, a still Sakura. Seemingly, something is pressed up against the door to keep it locked, and so we break the window and reach in to unlock the door, and as we rush in, we find that Sakura is indeed dead. From our investigation, we know that Sakura was struck over the head with 2 glass bottles, which we find out was from Yasuhiro and Toko, each busting her over the head like they're pro DK players, as both of them, along with Byakuya, were invited by Sakura to the rec room for a discussion. Byakuya, however, not showing up, and when Yasuhiro and Toko each arrived, they were thrown into a panic state, believing Sakura had invited them there to kill them. Of course, we eventually dismissed these as the killing blows because we know that Sakura was poisoned. Now keep in mind that throughout the investigation and up to this point in the trial, Asahina is adamant that Sakura's death was committed by one of these 3. Wrong! Then moving on to the discussion of being poisoned. In investigating, we noticed powder on Sakura's shoes, which turned out to be a poison which could be found in the chem lab, and searching the chem lab, we find a huge jar of knocked over poison. With this, we tie it to the alibi of Asahina, who had been with Sakura following the attacks of Yasuhiro and Genocide Jack. Sakura had instructed Asahina to fetch her a protein drink to help her with her wounds. And because of this, the blame eventually falls on Asahina, who suspiciously is very quick to go along with this sentiment despite her feelings prior. And of course, Byakuya completely rolls with this, and uses it as grounds to claim Asahina's friendship with Sakura up to this point was nothing but a farce. Which doesn't surprise me, considering this guy nearly kills himself. It's made apparent that the action taken was swapping the contents of the protein drink with the contents of the now spilled poison on the floor. And as previously mentioned, Byakuya proves this by downing the contents in the poison bottle.
I'm talking about the protein, of course.
You're wrong. Sulfuric acid.
While Byakuya is hell-bent on his stance being correct, we instead impose a different idea, and that Asahina is not the one to blame, which he ain't a big fan of. Kyoko taking a look inside the glass bottle that Byakuya had just emptied, we find a glass shard that he had somehow not happened to consume. That kinda sucks. Glass being present in this bottle proves that it was in the room when the window was smashed, yet we find it in the chem lab, and instead, near the end of our investigation, we find an empty protein drink over top of the smashed glass from the window. This effectively proves that the evidence was tampered with by Asahina. Instead of going to inform the others of Sakura's state when we found her, she instead went to the chem lab and took the poison bottle that was currently in the room and swapped them around to make it effectively look like the poison that Sakura drank came from the protein container. Eventually, Hina explains that as she went to the chem lab to get Sakura's protein, she noticed the bottle of poison already spilt, which prompted her to quickly rush back to the rec room, but it was already locked. Byakuya is absolutely dumbfounded by the fact that he could ever possibly be wrong.
You fucking dog!
But the question still remains, why did Asahina lead us along like this? Turns out, as she had returned to the rec room and found Sakura motionless inside, in front of the door was a slip of paper, detailed to be Sakura's suicide letter, which seems to detail in Sakura's words that she had fully fallen into despair because of her friend's mistreatment, and this is the reason why Hina blames all of them for Sakura's death. But turns out, Monokuma's a fuck-ass snake! Because he confesses to swapping out Sakura's real letter with a fake one, which he now allows us to read. Here, Sakura details her reasoning for being undercover as a mole in the killing game, claiming that Monokuma had held her family's dojo hostage, and the only way it would be released is if she would kill someone in the killing game. So to meet this demand, Sakura chooses to sacrifice herself. She determines that without any more secrets among them, the remaining members of the group can work together to escape Hope's Peak. and wishes for everyone to fight on in her memory, while detailing that she had executed one final act of vengeance against the mastermind, which we later find out to be her breaking the lock to the headmaster's office. Afterwards, Monokuma's having a big old giggle fest and believes that this revelation will cause everyone to turn on Asahina for her actions. But we ain't having none of that.
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Not only is Asahina forgiven, but everyone vows to stop participating in the game, including Byakuya, who feels that with tampered evidence, the game is no longer fair. And with this, the killing officially comes to an end. Hey, wait, who's going to receive the punishment then?
That fucking that I hate.
With Sakura's trial all wrapped up and Monokuma killing the best character in the game again, we're later approached by Kirigiri, who wants us to meet her upstairs on the 4th floor data lab. However, we find out that we were asked to come up here in order to play as a distraction while Kirigiri goes to investigate the now unlocked headmaster's office. So we go in front of the data lab and play a little funny dance for Monokuma, which allows Kyoko to get her hands on 2 specific things from the headmaster office. A file detailing the missing 16th student of the class, which has been foreshadowed since the very first trial, as there's been an empty seat this entire time. And most importantly, a master key which allows her access to every room in the building. The next day we got access to floor 5, so let's get up there and figure out what's waiting for us this time!
Operator, may I help you?
Beavis is bleeding.
No matter how negative something is, just add LOL and it automatically becomes positive.
Okay.
In addition, we have access to a greenhouse and a dojo, but none of this really matters because the killing is over. As we reconvene in the dining hall to share information on what we've discovered, Toko presents a knife that she found in a classroom on the 5th floor, and it's decided that to keep it from getting into dangerous hands, the knife is given to us. On top of this, it's important to note that the 5th floor does not contain a set of stairs leading to a higher floor, meaning we've reached the top of Hope's Peak. But before this meeting is disbanded, suddenly, Kirigiri is interrogated for information that she is suspected of hiding. Among all of the students in the class, Kyoko is the only one who we have no idea of her ultimate talent. And when she is requested to give up this information, she claims to have no knowledge of what it is. And in response to this, due to his mistrust, Byakuya forces her to give up her room key. Later on, Kyoko once again requests us to cause a distraction on Monokuma so that she can go prodding around. So we hit him with another yoinky splunk. Following this, to our surprise, we learn that Kyoko is so deep that even Monokuma can't seem to find her, which brings about suspicion from our other classmates. During the subsequent night, we're awoken from our sleep by our favorite masked assailant, ready to kill us. But thankfully, Kyoko walks in and scares him off. But as we awake, we come to find that the knife we were given is now missing. And not just that, it seems we've slept in a little late. We quickly get up and take ourselves to the gym, where we see everyone collectively gathered around a busted Monokuma. Looks like while we were snoozing the day away, everyone else stumbled upon an already dismantled Monokuma in the gym and started tinkering with it. And up until we arrived, they've been tearing this guy apart like Glamrock Freddy. But once everyone's assembled, Byakuya has us all gather at the headmaster's office. It's time to get some answers. But in order to brute force our way into the office, Toko is sent to go fetch a pickaxe from the greenhouse. However, Genocide Jack is instead the one to return and inform us that we got another dead body on our hands. The group hastily runs inside and we find our masked fellow dead in the middle of the floor. We figure it's time to begin our investigation, and step 1's gonna be unmasking our friend here. And then Toko fucking dies. Once we assess the scene, it's deduced that the victim this time around is our missing 16th student, Mukuro Ikusaba. In the pursuit to get answers, we're back at the data lab, but this time the door's unlocked and we let ourselves in. The data lab seems to be a command central of sorts, with access to cameras across Hope's Peak. And by looking around, we discover the disturbing realization that all of the events that have occurred up to this point have been broadcast worldwide. Even Monokuma returns to confirm this as fact. And before we get any chance to recover from the shock, the 5th class trial is declared. Everyone's got an alibi except us and Kirigiri, since through examining the body, the murder took place while everyone else was still in the gymnasium messing with Monokuma. And during that time, while we know that we were sleeping, we were still absent from the rest of the group. And Kirigiri was absent throughout the entirety of the investigation, only showing up when the trial was about to begin. This makes the entirety of Mukuro's trial a back and forth between us. This basically continues until it comes down to one singular decision. While we know that the knife that was stolen from our room seemed to be the killing blow on Mukuro's corpse, it was also discovered that she had various wounds that we deduced came from a collection of arrows which we find in a locker in the dojo. Except the key to this locker is found in Kyoko's room. With all of this stacked up, everyone is adamant that Kyoko is the murderer, and it's up to us to make the ultimate decision here. We know that she had a master key allowing her access to every room in the building, but don't forget that earlier Byakuya had revoked her room key. Kyoko blatantly states if she dies here, the mysteries of Hope's Peak will lay dormant. If we make the decision to call her out on her lie and inform everyone of the master key she's been holding, Kyoko will be found as the Blackened and be executed. Without her knowledge and expertise, no one else in the group is capable of uncovering the remaining secrets of Hope's Peak. And with no one else willing to commit another murder, everyone remains trapped in the school for the rest of their lives. All the guys end up banging Asahina for some reason, and Toko just explodes, I guess.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Okay, so this has like nothing to do with anything, but I found this image, and I thought it was funny, because it kind of explains why Toko's dead, and it's kind of silly that she killed herself. So I thought this was real, so I busted out the actual manga and I sifted through this bad boy and I found the page with the bad ending, but it wasn't there. So I looked on Reddit and it turns out it's part of a hentai that they commit adultery. So we know that the entirety of this trial has been fabricated, but we are unwilling to let Kyoko's mission end here, and so we decide to keep her lie and point out that Byakuya has had her room key this entire time, and with her not having access to her room, there's no possible way she could have put the access key inside. This, however, is something Monokuma does not anticipate, and with seemingly no other option, he's very quick to proclaim us as the Blackened and rushes everything into the execution. While everyone seems to find this incredibly suspicious due to how short this trial has been, there's not much that they can do about it. We're thrown onto a conveyor belt that leads to a crusher while being educated about human reproduction.
We're gonna be talking about the penis! We'll be talking about the vagina!
Yes! Yes! Yes!
The king is back for round 3, and as a reward, we're spared and thrown into the trash.
Know your fucking place.
Welcome to the
After dropping into the pit and realizing our situation, we choose to conserve our energy and wait. Eventually, Kirigiri drops in to save us from the trash hole, using her master key to unlock the door. Following this, we gotta scale a ladder to find ourselves out of the trash pit and back into the school. And as we climb this ladder, Kirigiri opens up to some of the memories she has come to remember. Namely that she is indeed the ultimate detective, as well as the headmaster's daughter. Her entire reasoning for coming to Hope's Peak was to officially break ties from her father for good, as she strongly resents him for abandoning her as a child. Making it out of the underground, we confront Monokuma and demand a retrial. If he refuses, he threatens the integrity of the killing game for the viewers outside. And we wouldn't want the fans to be unhappy now, would we? They need their precious Danganronpa. With this, the final class trial objective is to uncover all the secrets of Hope's Peak, with the entirety of the school being opened up for investigation. While we may have already unlocked the highest floor of the building, we still hadn't had access to everything, namely two specifics: the biolab on the 5th floor, and a second staircase that's been on the 1st floor since the beginning of the game. The most important detail found within our biolab is the fact that it contains a morgue, and most importantly, this morgue contains 9 corpses. Hey, wait a minute. As we ascend the secondary staircase, we come across a floor in ruins. As we explore, there's a furnished room that contains a secret passageway. A passageway that's only unlocked via a passcode on the computer. It's deduced that this room belonged to the headmaster, and the passcode is Kyoko's name. Inside the passageway, we find a box and a picture of Kyoko with her dad as a child. And inside the box are her father's remains. Previously, Alter Ego had informed us that the headmaster was still located within the building. Turns out the person that we see killed by Monokuma in the cold open of the game is indeed Kyoko's father.
Mom, someday I'm going to go to the moon.
And Kyoko comes to find that a good majority of her erased memories was the reconnection of her with her father. On top of this, we come across a series of lockers which contain items pertaining to every one of the students in the class, which raises incredible suspicion. Upon entering Hope's Peak, we were immediately thrown into this killing game. Not once had we ever attended classes, or so we think. The last thing to be discovered is a tape including footage of everyone in the class being confronted by the headmaster of the school and agreeing to stay inside Hope's Peak for the preservation of its future. And before the class trial begins, Monokuma confronts us in the gym and hands us a class photo, with one very important detail: we aren't in it. Jumping right in, Monokuma decides that he too is going to be joining the winner's circle like he one of the boys. Hell no! It also looks like everybody's on edge for some ungodly reason. Turns out Monokuma had given everybody a photo, not just us, presenting these as evidence as well as the locker items and the tape with the headmaster we found earlier. It's decided that, as unbelievable as it is, everyone in the class has collective amnesia. Not just the pictures we were recently given, but we had stumbled across other photos prior to this featuring the now deceased in normal high school scenarios. Taking a break from the memory mumbo jumbo, the trial is refocused back on the murder of Mukuro Ikusaba. We already know the mastermind is the one that manipulated this murder because no one else in the class had committed it. On top of this, we also know there was a body missing from the morgue, meaning that a death was recycled. However, this had to be a death that was committed by the mastermind outside of anyone else's control. And there's been only one death in this game that fits that description: Junko Enoshima. Back in Chapter 1, Junko broke the rules by laying hands on Monokuma and in turn was impaled by a cavalcade of spears. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't bring this up when I was discussing the first chapter. I don't know, I was probably talking about something that was way more important, surely.
You, everybody, all of you.
The collection of wounds on the body that we originally compared to the arrows found in the dojo fit the description of the spears, not just with the wounds being much older, but them also being the killing blow. However, with the marks upon the charred corpse, we know that this indeed is Mukuro Ikusaba, meaning that the only person who we have yet to truly see face to face throughout the entirety of the Killing Game is the mastermind. That is Junko Enoshima. Junko enters and introduces herself as the self-proclaimed ultimate despair.
MILF.
Straight from her, Mukuro was actually her fraternal twin sister. And with Junko as the mastermind, she has Mukuro go in with the class disguised as her.
Am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
And when asked on why she had killed her, it's because it gave her a boner. Junko's #1 mission is to seek despair at all costs and inflict it upon anyone she interacts with. She then confirms the suspicions of everyone. We indeed have collective amnesia. Prior to the Killing Game, we had spent an entire year at Hope's Peak attending classes. And following the events of the tragedy, we then spend another year in isolation inside. All of these memories were stripped away from us. And as for the person that's responsible for the tragedy and derailing Hope's Peak's future, who do you think it is?
You suck!
Junko continues to explain the reasoning for being isolated within Hope's Peak's walls is that she drove the outside world to complete ruin. The entirety of society has collapsed under her rule. A high school teenager somehow caused the entirety of the world to collapse. That's fine though, the worst is yet to come.
Come on, boys. Won't you shake a poor sinner's hand?
With this information, it drives everyone to despair. Should they choose despair, Makoto will be executed and the remaining survivors of the class will be trapped inside Hope's Peak for the rest of their lives. Should everyone side with Makoto, Junko will be executed and the remaining members of the class will be set free into the now dystopian outside world. And it's up to us as the harbinger of hope to bring light into these darkened souls. With this decision, she becomes shrouded in despair, because how much lower could you get than have your multi-year master plan crumble before you? And as a result, Junko receives the punishment of every execution method prior. If you ask me, that's the ultimate despair. She couldn't even come with her own idea. Fucking lazy bitch. And with that, we exit Hope's Peak as survivors and seek to return hope to humanity. Danganronpa truly is something special. It's a story of hope and despair, trust and deceit. It's truly heartbreaking. This is a collection of students who were robbed of their futures and placed into a situation unlike anything they could ever have expected to be a part of. And while I'm sure no other high school class would be thrown into some kind of death game for the outside world to spectate, it makes me look back and really cherish the time I had as a high school student and the memories I made during that time. This is an experience that I'm truly glad to have had, and even more so to have shared. Not just with the people who have somehow made it this far, but also having shared my experience with this game as well as its sequels with some of the most important people in my life. Despite whatever funnies I've said up to this point, this is truly a wonderful and iconic cast of characters, not you, and I truly can't think of anything better to have wasted the last half a year doing. I don't usually ask of this, but this one took a long time, and I put a lot of heart into this, even if it's just a summarization of the game's story. But it'd mean a lot if, you hit that little thumbs up and you hit that subscribe button, dude.
Fuck off!
And with all of that being said, Chihiro is my son. I'd kiss Byakuya on the lips, and I can't wait for that 2x2 remake.
2 out of 10.